Hello and welcome to number one of this special Rugby League Coach podcast series, a series dedicated to a group of topics that basically you and I agreed on quite a while ago. Since then, I've been away. I've been sick while I was away, really sick. You can probably still tell I sound a little bit like Barry White or Darren Lockyer. I've got loads of topics to go through. The first one I think will be relatively easy, not too controversial or anything like that. But some of them are going to get a little bit juicy, I think, because there's some opinions out there, and you know that I like to share mine too. Plenty of topics to go through, including the future of the game. I'll just go through my bucket. Future of the game and the future of the NRL and Super League, youth development, tactical evolution, juniors not being able to compete before under 13, the school versus club representative system, administration of the sport, recruitment of players. So as you can imagine, we're going to get quite feisty, I think, at different points. But let's start nice and slow. Future of the women's game and the current development of females in the game. Obviously, I think everybody agrees with me that it's great to see the NRLW. It's great to see the Women's Super League, the Challenge Cup over there in England. It's great to see the opportunities that are available to females in the sport. And obviously, compared to even 10 years ago, this is light years ahead. And it must be exciting if you're a young lady growing up in Britain, New Zealand, Australia, Papua New Guinea, wherever it may be, and hoping to make a career in rugby league, because there certainly are some options. Obviously, a lot of what rugby league does and has done has paled into significance compared to the ARLW. Also, I'm recording these podcasts that you can see on YouTube, as well as listen to them on Spotify and Spreaker and iHeartRadio and iTunes and all them. Apple, sorry, not iTunes. Doing this hot on the heels of the Matildas doing so well in the Soccer World Cup, Ladies World Cup. That tournament was devised in 1991, and Women's World Cups, I believe, went on a lot earlier than that. I certainly remember being in England and hearing about female Rugby League World Cups going on in the mid-90s. I guess the difference is resources and resourcing. This will be a theme that I end up talking about quite a lot throughout this podcast series. The game doesn't generate enough funds, but there's a reason for that, and I go into that in some of the different podcasts, and there's a way they can get around that to short circuit that. And a lot of it comes down to them wanting control rather than just being the gatekeeper or the facilitator of people who can get money in. But I'll go into more detail about that in some other podcasts, so make sure you listen. So if you think that both the football and the Rugby League World Cups have been happening in the female realm for a long time, where does the Rugby League World Cup for women sit compared to the Soccer World Cup? And I think they are indicative of the sport's sizes. And bear in mind that in Britain in the early 90s, Rugby League was the second biggest spectator sport in the country, and it certainly isn't now. So there's a lot of themes I'll be going through in these podcasts to discuss why that isn't the case anymore and where we went wrong. Obviously, when we talk about development in the women's game, that also elicited a lot of opinions from you. And during these podcasts, I will be going to your Facebook comments and going through them and giving my own reactions to that. So I'm going to have a look at my Facebook account now. Luke Garrell says, great to see the women's game evolving. I think we all agree with that. Anthony and Amanda Dowden coming along nicely. It's still in its early days professionally, but we've watched some bloody good games. And yeah, look, early days, definitely a thing. Anthony and Amanda, I will say this, it's early days because we let it just linger for so long. We've undersold the women's game for a long time, and it's about time we got our asses in gear. What you say about the bloody good games, well, one of the benefits of the Women's Rugby League is that they come into that without the years and years and years of excess baggage that men and boys come up with. Obviously, if you're a boy coming into rugby league as a kid, you'll be playing with other kids who've got years and years of history in the game through their families, and they pass down tactics, and the coaches pass down their tactics. Whereas the women's game approach it in a very different way. Although I do see that wrestling is starting to creep in. Amy McDonald, it's coming along. Pardon me. Some thought into age groups is needed. Under 8s, under 10s, and under 12s is right. We had to push hard to get under 13 standalone this year. Only got approved at the 11th hour. So, what is obvious, what's coming through in your comments, and I will be going through these now, or some of them at least, is the junior pathways for the females almost still seem to be thought out and being thought of on the hoof. So I've heard numerous stories about different rules for ladies and gents in the juniors. And I'm sure there's reasons for that. But again, another theme I'll be coming out with is that league tends to send down these blanket rules, but doesn't have a big enough resource to deal with the complaints or the issues that crop up. So, for example, you could have a rule that say if you turn 13 on a certain date, you can't play in this team, but that 13-year-old may have played with all these children for years, and it might be very important for their mental health that they play with that team because they're not used to strangers. But there's a blanket rule, and that, again, will pop up in quite a lot of the podcasts. Faye Ison, when the comp commenced in Brisbane, there was only seniors playing, 7 teams played in all, played a season at 35-minute halves. Players all played together from 14 years upwards because they learned and had the ability. Very few injuries also. I don't think we can do that anymore, Faye, in this world that we're in with concussion protocols and whatnot. But I do believe that we need to have a good think about and continue to have a good think. I'm not accusing the league of not thinking about this, where what ages ladies can play together, because I don't think it necessarily has to be the same as the boys, because they obviously develop at different rates and whatnot. And if we go even deeper into it, I would argue that some of the collisions are of a different velocity and power and whatnot. So we can't have a carte blanche approach to these things. I think the game is growing that rapidly, the women's game. It was coming from a relatively low base. So when they do talk about that, remember that we're not talking about millions and millions of dollars or pounds, but it's imperative that we put a real big microscope on the way we're developing the next generation. I've been privy to a lot of schoolgirl development, and the reality is that there was an awful lot of really talented girls came through, but it was very easy for them to drift away if they didn't pick something up at 17, 18 or 19. There wasn't really a catching process suitable enough for many of them, so many of them drifted away. Cara Joseph, she's probably the loudest drum banger in Queensland for Ladies Rugby League. I am a firm advocate that the SEQ, that's the South East Queensland Girls Comp, and in fact, any comp would benefit by going back to the way the competition was run from 2014 to 2018. During that period, the ages alternated from even, odd, even, etc. So I assume that means 12-13, 12-13 or something like that. This allowed teams to remain together to grow and develop, as we have traditionally seen in the junior mixed and boys games from under 13s up. It's not a bad point. And I guess when you're administering the game, we can always look at the 10-metre rule for the impact it's having on children. Now, I know we go from 5 metres in juniors and then move up to 10, but can't we do 8? Can't we do 7? Can't we do 6? Surely there can be somewhere in between. Cara also mentions the abolishment of the QRL Junior State Carnal was one of, if not the worst decisions ever made for our juniors, male and female alike. That decision, along with the decision to change the age groups for the schoolgirls state and national rugby league championship, has magnified the issue for our girls, who will now not be eligible to make any representative teams until they are 15 years of age. A terrible outcome for our ladies who love to league. So look, I could go on and on and on, but what I will say is this. We have a great product in terms of women's rugby league on both sides of the world. It's great to see. It's developing. It's good. But we've got an awful lot of work to do to get that pathway right, and an awful lot of people who want to help it. Let's create opportunities for coaches. Let's create opportunities for players. Keep a lookout for all the different podcasts. There's going to be some juicy ones.